Hello, welcome to Boss Moves and Benefits, where we craft benefit solutions like a corporate blueprint. Strategic, efficient, and impactful. I'm Brooke, your host, and today we're exploring big plays for Big Biz, Enterprise Strategy Unpacked by CBC. CBC's approach to large enterprise accounts is a little different. 51 or more employees, we have a strategy for you. This is a jam-packed episode to give you an overview of our approach. We will be doing deep dives in the future and in each of these categories. Joining me are my colleagues Jagel, Ken, and Robin for a 30-minute discussion. All right, guys. Are you ready?
We're ready to go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So we know all too well that enterprises face complex challenges. And it really is custom packed to whomever we're talking with, right? It's intricate, it's rigorous, it involves compliance. It involves setting the right expectations, not only for the client themselves, but for each of their employees as we deliver their benefits. CBC delivers transparency and cost containment strategies to address these demands, right? So today I want to dive into that. What are we doing? What makes us different? And how are we going to stand apart? Compliance is critical, Jagel. What solutions are we bringing to the table for compliance?
The best solution that we've found is to be able to track it. Right? There is sometimes compliance out of sight is out of mind. It's definitely not the primary focus of an HR or benefit team. So we bring focus to compliance. So we've built in our system a compliance calendar, if you would, with tasks and associated dates. With our service team, we basically manage those tasks to ensure that we're meeting all deadlines that need to be met in order to keep the client compliant. In order from 1095C auditing, ACA, for CMS reporting,
5500s,
F720 forms, you name it, RxDC, which is a new one in the market. So we're keeping them compliant and working with them to the point that really all they need to do is sign and submit. We do all the legwork for them and keep them on time and compliant.
So if I'm pretty green in HR, right, and I come in and I'm talking to you or HR benefits specifically, we get this a lot in that 100, 200 space where someone comes in and says, I just got promoted to take over benefits. I don't know what I'm doing. So would you say that our compliance model is basically going to lay that out for them?
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I think we need to meet them and understand their status, right?
Right.
Do they have an SPD? When did they last update the wrap document? And it's surprising that many of our clients that we take on, they have not updated their SPDs or wrap documents in years.
Right.
So it's
or may not even have them.
Exactly.
Especially at groups that size, right?
So understanding where they're at and then how to bring them forward into a compliant environment.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing that is, when we talk about our transparency is that those tasks that Jagel's talking about, it's on our client's homepage, in our system. So if we're past due, if they see it coming up and we don't hit our target, they 100% know that we're not on our game.
Which never happens, by the way.
All deadlines will be met by CBC.
Because that hits Jagel's scorecard. Good question, Brooke.
Yeah, because I think, one thing I just want to kind of level set here for when we're talking about enterprise clients, a lot of times that goes past like the 500 range. Wouldn't you think enterprise? What would you classify it as?
I classify enterprise probably 2 to 20,000. Okay. In that range. Where we can really make a huge impact on cost structure and benefit administration, regardless of what system that they're on, because we're system agnostic, and I'm sure Brooke's going to hit that in detail.
That's true. So if we're using the term enterprise, generally we're speaking over 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 5,000. However, I'd just interject, if we're still talking about compliance at least a little bit, that we're going to deliver those same compliance resources to the 100 group.
That's what I was going to say. Your experience with us on the compliance front, whether you have the 51 employees or you have 10,000, 20,000 employees, it's all going to be the same, right?
Or even below that, a level funded.
Yes.
You don't have to be 51. You have some reporting responsibilities even at a lower.
And wrap doc and 125 plan doc for small businesses. So
everyone should have it.
I agree.
Everybody has Jagel.
Everybody should have a Jagel like we do. All right. Ken, we talk a lot about financial success, corporate stewardship, budgeting, reporting, data warehousing. Let's dive in a little bit.
Sure. The thing that's interesting to me about this is how different it can be from client to client.
Mm.
I mean, the expectation is, or you'd want to think that it's block and tackle, right? So we have IBNR. We set our projections for the year. We're shoring that up quarter to quarter. We're looking at plan performance, relative to premium equivalents or whatever that metric is. But it honestly never fails from organization to organization that the leadership, particularly in finance, is gonna kind of have a different eye and something else that might be important to them. So in as much as we have built out a reporting suite that we think is going to effectively, capture plan performance relative to, the goals that have been set out. I mean, it never fails that there's something else that we need to tweak and add. And so over time, we've been able to do that. And I think it also speaks to our theme of outworking and creating value in terms of the willingness to kind of redefine those reports and develop them. And then, more recently, the pivot towards data warehousing.
Yeah. Can you broaden that? Because data
Sure.
warehousing, somebody might be listening here and doesn't even understand.
Sure. So we're leveraging a third party, and we are, on behalf of our large self-funded clients, pulling the data from all the various points to them. So in the past, we've talked about the fact that we like to unbundle and we like to negotiate every piece. So good news, bad news. Good news is we've negotiated this value with every single piece of the pie. The bad news is now we have all these separate vendors, right?
Right.
So now we're pulling reporting from the TPA, from the PBM, from the stop loss carrier, from payroll, from bin admin, perhaps even life insurance. We're setting the fixed costs, like the premium equivalents, et cetera. So what we're doing is we're creating a central data repository that's going to house all of that. So value there is, one, we're able to design a single data set from which we can extract the reporting that we want on behalf of a particular client. Two, that data exists in perpetuity on the client's behalf. It's not ours, it's theirs.
Right.
We've just facilitated the ability for it to be stored at this third party. Three, we can bring in other parts and pieces as needed. So example, we can bring in like a case manager or an anchor nurse type of program where they can look at what's going on, not just in terms of plan performance, that's more so our job in conjunction with finance, but from a risk management standpoint or a case management standpoint, right? What are we seeing trend-wise relative to large claimants, prescription drug activity, any themes in terms of diagnosis, prognosis, et cetera, and make recommendations around integrating opportunities to intervene, whether that is point solutions or other third-party programs that we think would benefit. So ultimately, I think answering the question from the data warehousing standpoint, reporting standpoint, and stewardship standpoint, it just kind of puts, well, I wasn't say puts us in the driver's seat, helps put our clients in the driver's seat to kind of navigate the future of their program from a lot of different perspectives.
Well, it's especially when it removed from when we unbundle people, right? So
yeah, yes and no. And I was just thinking about what Ken was saying, and I think that other clients or prospective clients might have data warehousing, and normally in that they're having their TPA and the RX information going in there. We're pushing everything because we use our bin admin system or anybody's bin admin system to push into ours via API or files. Their payroll deductions, so their fixed costs, we do the billing for them, so we know. So if you're thinking, okay, we have X employees, and then this is going to be our fixed costs, and this is how much we're going to collect, that never happens because there's adjustments and there's arrears and what have you. So for us to be able to bring that into our system, we bring that into the data warehouse and the reporting. So they have like a real-time budget of what they actually paid, not what they were projected to pay, which definitely sets us apart.
It's a whole health outcome, isn't it? Of all of your benefits that you can see just in one spot. Jagel, one of the hard parts we have, especially when we migrate from an ASO client to unbundling, is that reporting factor. Can you talk a little bit about that transition period and how difficult it is sometimes for us to get the actual reporting that we need in order to make strategic decisions?
Well, it can be incredibly frustrating,
Right.
right? It's a frustrating process. Some TPAs or some carriers do not want to release data.
Yeah.
Or they make you pay exorbitant amount of money to access to your own data.
They kind of use finances as a barrier
Exactly.
to you getting your data.
Exactly. So that's frustrating. And then there's also limitations to the reports. We want to see DICE and the data the way we want to see it, something that it's meaningful for us. It may be meaningful for our client.
Right.
And there's a limitation to that too. So having access to the data where we can pool and piece together that any information we want to see and how we want to see it, it's monumental.
Right. And we, again, don't own the data warehouse. That can go with the client, right?
Correct.
So
Stays with the client.
if you ever leave us, not that you would, you can take your data with you.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
That's what we want as a whole health outcome. We want them to be able to take data and move forward.
I agree. I mean, as an employer, I would want that.
Right.
I want to see how the changes that I'm making and implementing from year to year impact the health or the benefits of my employees. So it's really meaningful.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So my favorite thing that we do is benefit administration. You know, I'm a nerd for operations and administration. I don't know why, but it's just my thing. So at CBC, what I think is unique about us is that we're going to look at your benefit administration and try to find the best solution for you. If that means integrating with an HRIS system like Workday, Paymaster, Paycom, ADP, we will integrate. We have our own in-house programming team. So what that means is we can be extremely flexible when it comes to your plans and plan types. If you need to set up a unique plan that maybe other vendors haven't seen before, we can pivot on a dime. And we can get that plan set up for you. And a lot of times what ends up happening, even with some of our clients that are enrolling on some of these other vendor sites, is that they have limitations and they look to us to solve for them within our system. So we end up leveraging both systems to help make meaningful solutions.
A good example of that, Brooke, even the big systems, a lot of them don't do like state filings.
Right.
And they're just creating the report, so there's no audit process. You know what I mean? That's it requires a great deal of work on behalf of the HR department. And so when we're able to ingest that enrollment into our system, we do all the monthly audits. You know, we're looking who is at risk and we're reporting back. So, you know, doing a monthly audit on 1095C by the time of the end of the year, I mean, literally for all of our clients, Jagel has them out the second week of January, and it's as clean as a whistle. You know, I think we only have one client that even audits it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, as a single example, right? That's an example of some of the services that we can provide on that front. We work with an HR consulting firm we have for years, and we were on a meeting a week or two ago, and she was describing her services that they provide as everything from hire to retire. And I loved that analogy because I use one that's similar when I describe what we do, which is, you know, managing every touch point on the life cycle of an employee from or an employee that are potentially on the employee benefits plan, from defining eligibility within the confines of ACA, making the offer, acknowledging that offer or waiver, and then what happens throughout the course of their lifetime while they're in the plan. They get married, divorced, have a baby, turn 26, move out of the area, go to college, any of those things that can happen. We're documenting the processes that are associated with that, automating that to the extent that we can, and then everything that goes along with it in terms of communication, documentation, interaction, whether it's EDI, API with the appropriate systems via third-party administration, payroll, et cetera. And it's a lot of moving pieces. But, you know, as I like to explain, like, we'll do as much as you let us.
Right.
You know?
Exactly,
And
yeah.
so it's not a canned product. And then it's probably a theme that you're hearing us get to relative to the services that we provide, because you can't just roll all off the shelf and this is what you get. And I think that is how we've created value over time. That's what our clients appreciate about us, is that we are kind of malleable and flexible, so to speak.
Yeah, and willing.
And build the suit.
Yeah, willing to try.
Yeah.
Right. We're willing to try to make sure that we're able to provide the right things. Right. And some things that we talk about are with payrolls and arrears files. We have our own custom reporting tool that we can literally design within a week, the right report for your system, no matter what you're in and what you want to see. That allows us, again, to pivot to any type of result that they want to
Well, I mean, you
we're
hit it,
listening
which
to.
is that, these huge systems are rigid,
Yes.
right? And so they're not necessarily built to conform to what, broadly I call business rules, right? But that could be your eligibility, your classes, your plan types, your plan designs. And how about someone who's growing fast through merger and acquisition, right? Now we've acquired a new company. They've got a whole new different set of plans, a whole new different set of eligibility. How are you accounting for that? So whether to your point, whether you're using our system wholly and or we can kind of use it to shore up those gaps, right? So
Right.
I mean, yeah, another example I'll give is okay, client A has an eligibility rule or a plan design that can't be accommodated within their insert the name of your big giant payroll system here.
Yeah.
And then they submit that change and it's, oh, great, we'll put that in our dev queue for Q2 2027,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we're going to get that done by next Tuesday.
Right.
Right.
That's kind of the benefit of what we
At
have.
no cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At additional
At
cost,
no
right?
cost.
That's the boutique
Right.
experience that we're looking
I was
for.
gonna say, Brooke, I think one thing that we're missing is that CBC also has a sister company, Control Source, that does leave management, COBRA, HSA, FSA. And what we've learned so much is that a lot of our clients ask us to do leave because we're already doing the benefit administration. But what we didn't realize is when you pair those two together, you really find a lot of compliance issues. So you normally have a third-party administrator or company doing your leave management or FMLA, and you have your broker, and they don't really cross paths. And so what we find out is, oh my gosh, people are not terminating past FMLA exhaust. That's a real problem, So because what happens is that the leave company just says, hey, these people are exhausted. If they don't go back in the benefits administration system and term them or change their codes to ineligible, then that risk remains on the plan. And we see that a lot of holes in the marriage between those two that we can shore up those gaps that most groups have.
Right. And that's utilizing Control Source as our kind of leverage there. So we've talked a little bit about compliance, data warehousing, reporting, benefit administration. Want to talk about kind of that network approach that we were talking about earlier. And that why is it important for, I guess what I'm trying to get to is, why is it important for an enterprise client other than accessibility to doctors to think about network?
Well, it's the number one claims issue, right? It's the most that you're going to spend on your health plan is in claims. And so when you think of the BUCAs, when we say BUCAs, it's Blue Cross Blue Shield, it's Cigna, it's Aetna, it's United. Those are the big ones that majority of enterprise clients are either on them with an ASO basis or they're unbundled and they're leveraging their network somehow, right? And I think for a lot of enterprise clients, they think that all of those are the same. Like they're performing the same function, yes, but they don't have the same discounts. And so the biggest impact you can make to your plan is do analysis on where your employees are accessing care, which one of those networks have the deepest discounts. And it's very different by region. Some have broad stripes, but like we're here in Las Vegas, which is very unique, because we have a local homegrown, HMO that kind of disrupts the market here.
Mm-hmm.
So to look at what we normally do is we take the last couple of years of claims and then we'll run it through all 4 BUCAs and say, okay, if you had these claims running on United or Aetna or Cigna or Blues, this is what it would be. And we compare whatever network you're with against that. So that's one benchmark because it's looking at historical data. It doesn't necessarily look at the future of what, claims are going to be incurred. Right. For that, there is a report, it's called the UDS report. Most carriers have access to that. All 4 BUCAs have to give their discounts to that. And we can run reports based on the census and geography by zip code, right? So we'll look at the historical, we'll look at the future, where are those discounts in those zip codes, and we'll make a recommendation. And the biggest thing is we're so confident in our analysis that we'll put our fees at risk for that.
Right.
So if we we just had a client that we saved, they were 2,000 people and we saved $2.5 million just on the network change that year, right? So that's a big deal. We wouldn't put our fees at risk if we didn't know they could 100% get it. So,
and I would say that although we are carrier and network agnostic, we know certain networks are going to be a little bit more successful from experience, right?
Based on geography,
Yeah.
a lot of time, certainly, some of the networks have, stronger footholds, in different geographic areas. But, interesting, it's still all pretty much always worth doing the work, because, I mean, so many of our clients now are multi-location, and or they're growing via merger and acquisition, or just using ourselves as an example, right? 6 years ago, we were evenly split between 2 states. Now we're in 35 states.
Yeah.
So it's worth doing the analysis to understand where your claims are being utilized, and and how that impacts what your claims costs are.
Okay.
It's not just the BUCAs either, though, too, Brooke. Like we can do custom networks, so we have.
That's kind of where I was going. Let's talk a bit about reference-based pricing.
That when Brooke says that means all the HR people just hung up on us, and our audience right now is all CFO, right?
Yeah.
So that's the dirty word, right? RBP. And I would definitely say if you happen to be in an Anthem state, and just this year they are doing RBP with the Anthem network. That means
in California and some other states, right? It's a little limited right now. Yeah, it's a pilot program. Before we kind of dive straight in there, reference-based pricing, break it down. What does that even mean?
As opposed to having a network like we just talked about with the BUCAs, when you have the logo on your card and your Blue Cross Blue Shield or your Cigna or your Aetna, you don't have that. And so that's the struggle with communications that people have had, historically with RBP. What you do is they'll go and access care, and claims are paid as a percentage of Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the old days, like the old indemnity days, really, where it was, UCR is what we used to sell plans on before there were like network contracts. Yeah. But what we're finding is RBP is usually about 30% below the BUCAs from a claims perspective. Some of our strategies have been, don't go all RBP unless you want to, but, give employees a choice. Will they reduce their, like to reduce their employee contributions by 30% for the same plan design on RBP? Probably so.
Yeah.
We know how to minimize the noise. So I'm not saying
that's where we're going to
go jump into the waters, right away. We have a lot of experience with it. But for right now, a lot of our enterprise clients are dipping the toe. So
I look at it kind of like from a historical perspective, right? So when RBP was launched, I think there was a lot of people that were naturally just attracted to the savings.
Mm-hmm.
But then almost right away was what they call the noise, right? Which is basically the fact that people are going to have the potential to be balance billed. You may show up to the doctor and be turned away because you don't have that logo on your card. And frankly, we were not early adopters. We stayed away with it. We stayed away from it because we didn't want to deal with that noise. We do serve two masters, and one of them is HR, and one of them is that employee experience. One of them is that attraction and retention of talent and employees. So what the evolution has been over the last couple of years, and where we have found some success, is wrapping the RBP concept with a physician-only network. Right. So now your reference-based pricing is for your larger claims, your hospital admissions, your surgeries, et cetera. But you can still get that logo on your card when you want to go to the doctor, when you want your preventive visits, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so then, to your point, initially, it was some of the lower cost, maybe not as robust, maybe not as deep of a discount networks. More recently, we're getting the BUCAs, namely Anthem, that's been willing to offer that physician-only network. And honestly, it's just been a win for us because we were able to deliver on the savings element by savings on those high cost claims in the hospital, but we're still giving the members that logo when they show up to the doctor's office, and so they have a positive experience.
That's huge.
And a lot of the times it's being proactive, right? Especially from an employer perspective. If you're going to be introducing these types of plans, you need to be proactive. You need to be proactive with the communications with the employees. You need to have a vendor on board with you that's going to be proactive as well, right? So we choose a lot of the vendors that we're using for RBP for that specific reason, right?
Yeah, the choices we usually make have a little higher reimbursement. So, you still get the bang for your buck, but a little bit less noise, unless, that you're willing to go a little bit further for the noise too. So I think that's a client choice, but not one we usually do, on enterprise wide.
Yeah.
And the other thing is custom networks. We have a client that is with Anthem. Anthem, it has the deepest discounts. We did all the analysis, but then they had a very small population in Georgia that those claims were running double what everybody else's claims were running. We're like, what the heck is going on? We can't get another BUCA in there to have those claims lowered. And so carving out and building custom networks is also something that is a really smart play if you're looking at that data analysis and talking about network discounts.
I think we could probably talk about network all day long.
We could.
And that may be another episode.
Yeah.
Coming up here, I just want to kind of do a quick speed round. What you guys think are the major challenges enterprise clients are facing today? 20 seconds each. Go, Robin.
I would push the one that I was just saying. We see a lot of issues, especially from a compliance standpoint, between leave and benefit administration.
Yeah.
So I think bringing those two together are huge.
Yeah. Ken?
Robin brings up a good point, and I think it's the things that are not top of mind, right? And so we're chasing block and tackle stuff, like what's right in front of us, eligibility, how's our plan running? But to Robin's point, what about the person that's been off on leave and we didn't collect their payroll deductions, right? Or what if there's 50 of them or 100 or 1,000? Right?
Yeah.
How's that impacting the plan performance over time? So arrears is something that we've been focused on a lot recently.
Jagel, what do you think are the major challenges facing enterprise clients today?
I think it's a deep dive, a legal review of their SPDs and comparing their SPDs and wrap documents against the reinsurance contracts, for example, just to make sure everything aligns. But also, I think from a compliance perspective, and don't mean to continue to beat up on compliance, but it is definitely it could be a very costly mistake.
Yeah.
So just recently, in fact, we passed a DOL audit. We were asked to provide records when an employee actually accepted and was delivered or was provided with Medicare Part D, HIPAA, CHIPS, all the SPDs, all of it, right? So everything that you are required to provide an employee when they enroll in health insurance coverage and throughout the life of that employee in that plan. And we passed. And we did so because of our system.
Because we timestamp it.
Exactly.
Yes,
we timestamp every single acceptance and acknowledgement every time somebody goes through the website. So I think that saved,
Yeah, and we can full reporting on it.
Yeah, the best part of that story is that I think we're one of the only systems that do it where you literally, from a user standpoint, it's not fun, but they're accepting every single document and it's time date stamped. So we know. But the best part about it is we got the call because our client was required to comply with a DOL audit for a complaint. And it took us literally 2 seconds to export it and send it over. And they're like, we've never seen that before. With all the documents, and the reference numbers to the documents.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think great. My one is just these large, complicated benefit administration systems. They're either requiring employers to train their staff to a point where they become experts on the system, or they have to hire out a third party in order to manage, maintain, and develop that system, which can be costly as well. So I think that's something that is overseen, and it's just kind of done because it has to be done. We're going to close that out on our last note here today, guys. Is there anything else you would?
This is not like, I think it's a cool thing that we do, especially when we're talking about leave and FMLA exhaust, is that we created a product called Cobra Avoidance. And so what that allows us to do, we have, we'll talk about our great marketplaces for individual coverage, and Medicare specialists that we have. But what we can do is that when somebody exhausts FMLA, they're usually very sick. Sometimes they can get on Medicaid, sometimes they can get on Medicare, and usually they can for sure get some type of subsidy, from the marketplace. And so making that contact and that warm transfer for, that they're going to get their Cobra packet. We usually administer that too, so we can have that information in, do a consult with them and say, what is the best option for you? Cobra, Medicare, Medicaid options, subsidy options. Once we go through that, 90% of the time, it's not Cobra. So with our enterprise clients, we're removing a couple spec claims, through that process, which is a huge savings.
It's again, that whole health benefit outlook and that white glove experience. Once you come off, we're still going to handhold you on your journey, essentially, when it comes to your benefits.
We still keep the employees after the journey.
They're still ours. They're still ours. So, Ken, one more thing I think you have on your mind that you want to talk about.
The one thing that we didn't get to today was PBM. So, spoiler alert, future episode, your PBM's probably ripping you off, and we'll show you how.
Can't wait to see that episode. Let's go.
All right, guys. Well, that's CBC's Enterprise Advantage. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you stream. And visit cbcins.com for a complimentary benefit consultation. Thanks for joining us.
For a free consultation on your employee benefits plan at the CBC's Health Insurance Marketplace for Costco members, find us at www.costcoquote.com.